The Trump administration working to secure peace in the Middle East and negotiating with some of the region's key players like Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff spotted interacting with Turkey's intel chief as the world of Mideast spy espionage comes to the fore.
Here now is former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman. Dan, good morning to you. Great to see you. There's room for celebration and also deep caution in this moment. How are you processing this news?
Definitely cause for great celebration. Look, I look at this as the first phase of post-war reconstruction, post-war peace in the Gaza Strip and maybe the West Bank as well. Kudos to President Trump for bringing Egypt and Qatar and Turkey together to pressure Israel and Hamas to make this deal. Only in the Middle East could Israel have just tried to strike and kill the lead negotiator for Hamas, Khalil al-Hayya, just recently. And now he's the guy negotiating, albeit indirectly, with Israel. The caution here is that a lot of work remains to be done. Part of the 20-point plan that the Trump administration developed involves disarming Hamas and bringing together Palestinian technocrats, whoever they might be, into the Gaza Strip to oversee the post-war reconstruction there. A lot of money from the Gulf states to fund that reconstruction. And the concern that I would have after a 2-year war, a lot of lingering bad blood between Israelis and Palestinians and mistrust. We're going to have to see a lot of engagement going forward from the United States, from the Trump administration, to make phase 2 happen.
Yeah, let's drill down on the disarmament, phase 2, if you will. President Trump saying, quote, once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty, also adding that members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. But Dan, what can we do to make sure that members of Hamas don't ultimately rearm, don't ultimately return to the region? Because at the end of the day, we're not dealing with Boy Scouts here, we're dealing with terrorists.
Yeah, I think most of us felt like the timing of Hamas's attack on Israel 2 years ago was designed to ensure that the Abraham Accords would never be extended, that Israel and Saudi Arabia would never establish diplomatic relations. And so the country that most wants to ensure that no such agreement takes place is Iran. And yes, Israel and the United States have decimated Iran's capabilities, but Iran and their proxy terrorists, the Houthis in particular, still have some capability. Iran, I'm sure, will try to do everything they can to support whatever Hamas elements remain at large. And yes, disarming Hamas is going to be incredibly difficult. That's the only leverage they have. They don't want to give up political power, and they don't want to give up their arms. So there will have to be some boots on the ground, forcibly, I think, to make that happen.
Yeah. You know, Dan, you come from the intel world, and over the past 2 years, there have been some really incredible intel moments for Israel. One of them is the pager attack on Hezbollah. The other, I mean, you remember, they killed the political leader of Hamas inside Tehran. So how did those intel successes lead to this moment?
Yeah, I think Israel has arguably never been stronger, at least in recent memory, against its enemies throughout the Middle East, Iran and their proxy terrorists, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Israel has taken the fight to them, and that really opened the door for potential reconciliation, a potential deal with in Gaza and then writ large in the Middle East. Intelligence plays a critical role in the Middle East. It also plays a critical role in these negotiations. The key leadership from Turkey, Qatar, particularly Turkey and Egypt, however, it's the intelligence services that work those negotiations, whereas in the United States, we rely on our diplomats. That's not always the case in the Middle East. But Israel's intelligence successes and their military lethality has given them an advantage, obviously, and gives them the potential, at least, with the United States backing, support, and pressure, frankly, from the Trump administration, to give us a shot at some peace in the Middle East.
Dan, the remaining members of Hamas, they are giving up their only leverage at this point, giving up the hostages. So why? Why are they doing it? Why now? What is their end game to give up their only piece of leverage remaining?
I think Hamas was pressured to do so. I think Qatar has pressured them to give up their hostages. Remember that Hamas enjoys some sanctuary in Doha, and I think that certainly played a part. I also feel like Hamas's leverage with hostages has probably run out to this point. They're getting a pretty good deal. They're going to get a lot of their own people back in return as an exchange, and we have to be concerned about where they're headed and what role they might play in post-war Gaza Strip. But I think the leverage that Hamas has are their dispersed fighters and the challenge that Israel will have with the international community, particularly the Gulf states, in disarming them and ensuring that they don't play a nefarious role in whatever political process takes place in the future.
You know, Dan, it was 1 month ago today, on September 9th, that Israel launched that airstrike in Qatar and negotiations ground to a halt. And a lot of people said that this was the end of it. But it also put a lot of pressure on both Israel and Hamas to come to a deal. In hindsight, do you think that that strike was the catalyst to this moment?
I think there were a lot of elements, but I also kind of feel like it was just the pressure from the Trump administration, this never-ending pressure since the Trump administration took office on Israel, on the Gulf states. With that, you can't have a deal for the first phase without looking out at the horizon for the potential for a second phase where there's finally peace in this region. And I think that's what the Trump administration was able to accomplish. More than anything else, I think that was the critical element here.
Dan, you deal in the world of life and death. That is obviously what we are dealing with here. And in your world, saving lives is much more important than awards. But if phase 1 and phase 2 of this deal come to fruition, how could they not give Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize for what he ultimately did, which for eons people have said cannot be done?
Yeah, that's one thing I never had to really think too much about was Nobel Peace Prize when I was at the CIA. But I will tell you that in all the conversations we used to have at CIA, and we used to talk about the wickedly complex threats to our national security, the one that was the tightest wound Gordian knot was the Middle East. We came so close so many times, and there are so many bad actors there who don't want peace to happen. The idea that you could bring the parties together and potentially achieve peace is rather extraordinary. But again, a lot of work remains to be done, and this is going to take likely not weeks or months, but potentially years. And it's going to take a lot of work from the Trump administration to make it happen, but we're on the right path.
Does this open the door to normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia?
I think it has to. I think you have to see the potential down the road at a strategic level for this tactical success to happen in Gaza Strip. Israel needs to see these benefits, and Saudi Arabia as well. Bringing them together and the potential for diplomatic relations absolutely is necessary to ensure the best chance of success dealing with post-war Gaza Strip.
Former CIA Station Chief Dan Hoffman, we thank you so much for joining us. We could be in for an incredible homecoming.
Thank you. Have a good morning.
Meanwhile, President Trump's historic announcement being prompted by an urgent note handed by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to the president.
Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy joins us live with the details of that historic moment. Peter.
Good morning, and we can now read that private note that Secretary Rubio handed to President Trump thanks to the long lens of an AP photographer. It said in Marco Rubio's handwriting, "Very close. We need you to approve a Truth Social post soon so you can announce the deal first." Here is how it played in the room during an Antifa town hall.
Well, they're smart, but they're not smart enough. Oh, my microphone's broken. Departments to find the criminal conspiracy.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just giving. Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly.
That never happens here. And even though numbers from Hamas cannot be trusted or verified, tens of thousands of people have been killed in this war, and several dozen hostages remain missing. The president says they are all coming home by Monday.
I think you're going to see people getting along, and you'll see Gaza being rebuilt. We're forming a council that the Council of Peace, we think it's going to be called, and it's going to be
They're very powerful, and it's going to really, I think, to a large extent, it's going to have a lot to do with the whole Gaza situation. People are going to be taken care of. It's going to be a different world. I think really the Middle East came together. Amazingly, they came together. You know, they have some countries with extraordinary wealth, and just spending a small portion of that wealth can do so much for that area.
To put into context how long this war has been going on, 2 years, when Hamas launched their attacks on October 7th, Joe Biden was here being interviewed for the first time by the special counsel Robert Hur about his classified documents. It wasn't even the beginning of the end of the Biden presidency when this war started. The world has changed a lot. The president has changed. And now this one, Trump, is going to get credit for his hand in ending an 8th global conflict since he got back to office. Back to you.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, Peter, they seem to be agreement on, that President Trump, I saw Hamas, as well as the Egyptian leader, as well as Qatari, as well as Israel. No one disputes that Trump was the key to this coming together, even though there are a lot of people who deserve a lot of credit.
And when you look at the 20 points that all the sides agreed to, and it seems like there might have been some tweaks here and there, but the big theme was economic. He is promising to take this piece of land, not himself, but with global partners who have reshaped the Middle East over the last decades. He is going to take this piece of land that he calls the Riviera of the Middle East and help redevelop it. He wants to have a hand using his vision as a real estate developer to turn this completely destroyed city into something that can last for generations to come. They are a long way away from that, and it's going to take them years just to clear all of the destruction that you see in some of those images in Gaza. But that is something that finally, after generations in Gaza, got some of these fighters to lay down their arms.
Right. Thanks, Peter. Also, 50% of the tunnels are still up. They got to all be collapsed and filled in.